Okay. So just want to take a moment to thank Sam and Leonard for inviting me to speak today. And here we go, Designing for Dignity, the next frontier, product design, and how we get there. I went to college at SUNY Purchase. It is a rather brutal design. Of course, it's since undergone a renovation, and it's quite lovely. During my time there, back in 2012, I was their diversity coordinator for student government. And around that time, we of course learned about the murder of Trayvon Martin during that time. And as diversity coordinator for student government, I decided to have a meeting. We called it RAW, a safe-space discussion about racism and Trayvon Martin. And when the students entered that space, all the students of color were on one side of the room, and all the white students were on the other side of the room. The atmosphere was tense. And so I did this.
All right, listen up. I want everybody off the bus. Let's go. Follow me. Everybody. Let's go right now. All right. Everybody off the bus. Listen up. I don't care if you're black, green, blue, white, or orange. I want all my defensive players on this side, all players going out for offense over here. Right now. Let's move. Let's move. Let's move. Let's move. You and you. Offensive bus, sit together. You. Defensive bus, sit together. It comes to because the person that I have to sit next to is the same one that you'll be rooming with for the duration of this camp.
So I mixed up the students and got them all sitting together. And what you'll see now is student newspaper highlight reel detailing how the students received the event going forward from there.
Taking it back and stuff like that. But once everyone sat next to each other and things, it became much more of a safe space. That's true. That's how. At first, I felt like it was a battle between races. And then once we broke up and everyone sat down and more people became vocal, it felt really like a safe space. And that's what we need to be able to discuss these things without offending and rioting or shooting or I hate you.
Members of the Diversity Outreach Board, we're ecstatic with the turnout.
It became a lot more personal. You get a lot more time for people to actually say what's on their mind and how they feel and to express themselves, which is probably what was the most important thing to take away from today. People have these thoughts and feelings, but nobody's going to voice their opinion.
So, with that in mind, you may be asking yourself, what in the world does that have to do with product design? So let me get back to, no, I don't want to play it again. As much as I remember the titles, I don't want to play it. It brings me to axiom 1 of what I consider to be the background of designing for dignity. Design is the rendering of intent, and behavior is the medium of design. The first part of that phrase comes from Jared Spool, who says design is the rendering of intent. And you may think to yourself, well, isn't design visual? Nowadays, given the advent of things like Alexa and augmented reality, we're transcending just traditional visual design. It's a little bit more in depth than that, and we have to consider people's behaviors. That being said, the increase in people getting along with each other was an outcome of designing a space in a given way. And that had a huge impact on people's ability to talk with each other and treat one another with dignity. And that is a very good point that will continue for the duration of this talk. Designs and the behaviors they encourage will always reveal the product's original intent. To repeat that, design and the behaviors they encourage will always reveal the product's original intent. Now, show of hands going forward for the next few slides. Do you never leave your house without your phone? Raise your hand if that's the case for you. Okay? Do you sleep with your phone by your bedside? Do you make sure you have your phone on you before you hop into the bathroom? Don't be shy, I do it too. I do it too. You're in there 15 minutes, might as well use it. Do you feel unable to take time away from your smartphones? this brings me to an excellent TED Talk by Dr. Adam Atler. He wrote the book, Irresistible, The Rise of Addictive Technology and the Business of Keeping Us Hooked. That slide right there shows how much time has been taken away from us by the use of these technologies, and how as time has increased, or as time has gone by, we've gotten closer to the present, that little yellow sliver is where we spend our time away from sleep, work, survival, and using our smartphones. And to go back to the point of Axiom 1, design will always follow, or design will always betray the intention that originally created it. And of course, it's very profitable to do this kind of work. It's very profitable to design applications that take a lot of our time. It's something on the order of, in terms of lost productivity from Facebook alone, something on the order of $3 trillion of productive time, $3 billion worth of, $3 trillion worth of productive time. It's mind-boggling to consider. And yet, it's on what most of our careers are seemingly based. However, I would like to propose that regulatory fines, crisis management, and other such costs, such as Facebook recently came out with a bunch of ads saying, oh, we're sorry for undermining our democracy by allowing all these fake ads. It's like, sorry about it. So, yeah, at the end of the day, that costs money to put out those ads. I use that term loosely. And I would like to propose that it's much more effective to use humane design from the get-go. And we're starting to see this happen now, that users who have felt that their dignity has been impinged upon have put regulations in place that ultimately cost these companies money through regulations, such as through GDPR, where Google, of course, was fined $5 billion last week in the course of my putting together this slide. And even though, sure, they went from making $8 billion a year to $3 billion a year, that's still $5 billion less than they would have been making otherwise. And those fines are only going to continue. And once we get our boxing gear, and I'd rather not get into, well, heck with it. Once we kick out the Republicans in 2018, remember to vote, it's November 6th, then we're probably going to see a similar apparatus in place for our own companies in our own regulatory structures. So that being said, that's kind of what's on the horizon for a lot of these companies, and it's only going to get worse for them from here unless they do something. And humane design means viewing customers not as a means to making money, but as ends unto themselves. Humane design means viewing customers not as a means to making money, but as ends unto themselves. That is a very big point. And a little bit of pulling on Kant on that one, Immanuel Kant, 17th or 18th century philosopher, who that was his definition of dignity, and it's one I'm going to stick to as well because it gets to the point. If you just, to refer back to the earlier slide, where you had, everyone's time reduced to a little sliver of their full day, that is not viewing them as an end unto themselves. That's viewing their attention and their time, your attention and your time, as a way to make money. And it's not sustainable, because the moment that it just goes too far, you're going to vote somebody in, and you're going to put them in their place again through regulations. So, that being said, or at least that's the hope, as it were, these are what I would like to propose as humane design heuristics for designing for companies. And of course, these are all hypotheses. I unfortunately have yet to test these, although there is some existing research out there regarding some of these points. But I believe that for companies that are willing to account for the welfare of their users and not just use them as cash cows, then this could be a possible way forward, very similar to how Nielsen Norman Group, how they put together their 10 design heuristics that state how to navigate a product efficiently. Hopefully this will be the beginning of how we design products well for users.
Could you explain what those meant?
I'll get to questions at the very end of the talk. So pretty much the first one, notification bundling. There's an excellent Vox video to this effect, and I use it quite liberally in my research, is that pretty much notifications should be bundled in a periodic digest because it reduces user stress. It's one way to handle it. Batching it 3 times a day is much more effective than just as it is now or no notifications. There are studies to back this one up. Step number 2, stopping cues. Use pagination, timers, and other stopping cues to make sure that your users know that they are satiated in their topic or whatever they're looking for. There was another study done, a psychological study, that was to the effect that if you gave one person a automatically refilling bowl and you had another bowl that was a regular control bowl, you ate through it and it was done, the person who had the normal bowl would be satiated at the end of it, they would feel full. The person with the automatically refilling bowl, they would keep feeling hungry even if they felt like at some level disgusted, they would just keep going at it because it's like something is visually telling them, you gotta keep eating, you're not fully done yet. And of course we see that all the time with our applications, how they have infinite scrolling. If you're on Facebook, it just keeps going, all the new content keeps coming in. And that plays very much so into that one slide I was telling you guys about, the one little tiny sliver of where our time is. And of course, don't create more work for users through automation, through auto-tagging photos, things like that, and similar prompts. Color desaturation, avoids oversaturated colors. A lot of applications nowadays use bright reds and similar colors to really get your attention hooked in and make you think this is urgent, touching into really primal cues. Having desaturated modes for your phones and applications would be fantastic. And there's a way to do this on your phones already through using accessibility features to make your colors on your phones in black and white. But it would be fantastic if applications could account for this, perhaps having colorblind modes and things of a similar sort to allow them to still be navigable, but also not so overwhelmingly attention-grabbing in that sense. Doherty threshold observance. There was a study done way back in the 1980s, different time period, where they pretty much realized that if you had system feedback faster than 400 milliseconds, that it would be deemed as addicting and would suck in your attention and you would feel like an expert, and again, it would be addicting. I would like to propose, perhaps, that having an application that is either at or even a little bit slower than 400 milliseconds may help break that cycle for users and give them more of a sense of control over their product usage. So it isn't just they're using it habitually, they're actually using it because they need to accomplish something. Step number 5, recognition and safety. Plan for the worst. No expense should be spared to make all users feel at ease both physically and psychologically. And to this end, I want to plug the Tarot Cards of Tech by Artifact. They're a group based in Seattle, and the Tarot Cards of Tech are a series of cards that have prompts on them, and they invite you to ask yourself. For instance, one card is called the Scandal card, and they have nice little illustrations to go with them. And they'll ask you questions like, what's the worst headline you can imagine for your product? What happens in this sort of situation? Another one might be the Mother Nature card, and ask you, how would you use your product as if Mother Nature was your client, or the environment was your client? How would you make it environmentally friendly? And I highly recommend you Google that in your own time and give those a look through. They're fantastic. Diverse input validation. Accommodate edge cases and nuance, which may, out of implicit biases, just make users differ from yourself. Allow for a broader range of answers. An example of this This is from the book Designing for Real Life, which I also highly recommend, along with all the other books from a Book Apart series. They're fantastic. The clue application is essentially I believe it's a period tracking application. And the emphasis is on whatever users want to track, it's their choice, not clues. Some people may be viewing it as a way to anticipate pregnancies, other times it's about birth control, and that's up to the users to decide. And that's a principle I feel we can extend into all applications on mobile devices. And finally, raise the conversation. There is a little bit of this going on right now. We see this in LinkedIn and other products where they have little prompts of auto-completing the conversation. And Google now also does this too, which makes my life a little bit easier. But I feel this could go further than where it's going now. And also you may notice that on mobile devices or any sort of application, the fonts that you're using to type out any messages are always in sans serif fonts. And there have been some studies that suggest that those fonts lend themselves to seeming unusually authoritarian and severe. And is it no surprise that so many arguments that should be civil end up falling into disarray and chaos, because at some level we're looking at those conversations and what is an opinion is being presented as incontrovertible truth. And so we're looking at that and we're just like, no, not the case, shut it down right now. And is it no surprise then that that's the nature of our current environment? And I would like to propose a possible implementation of this. What would happen if you had an application that, say, using the iPhone X's face recognition capabilities and other biometric data, realize, like, okay, this spatial cue matches up with a certain emotion, and we'll correlate that to a gradient, let's say blue for sadness. And someone here is a college student, and they're writing college is really hard right now. And through the fact that psychology is a thing, it's a study that people do, we have information out there about ways to mitigate conflicts. Why not have an algorithm that churns out these messages saying, oh, you feel sad about college, like kind of empathizing with the user, kind of helping you make informed decisions about how best to help your friend at their moment of need, instead of just leaving you out to drift of like, oh, sucks to suck, sorry about it, don't leave you alone in your misery, but allowing you to also have more feedback to go on, and also having some nice serif fonts so they're less authoritative and it's more open to the conversation. So that's something I would like to propose in that vein. And my closing thoughts, I would like to close with showing the current status quo by way of Twitter. This is a little thread I came across the other day, and it's about Jack, one of the head people at Twitter, talking about the banning of Alex Jones from their platform, or lack thereof. And he's saying, yeah, people can form their opinions, no opinions, man, no biases. And Carolyn Moss is a reporter, and she had lost a friend of hers during the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012. And she's trying her best to, address that situation. Twitter troll comes around and he says, were you there? Do you see the bodies? Do you have evidence of this and that? And she, of course, says, yes, this is the experience I had. And someone replies, doubtful. And she reports this person in good faith. And Twitter's response is that did not violate their terms of service. Given everything I've said to date, you have to consider the possibility that that was how the use of that was a natural consequence of how the product was designed. Not so much that this is an aberration, but this, given the current framework, I'm not suggesting that Twitter is beyond salvation, as it were. I would like to suggest that, given the current design of Twitter, this is the natural outcome of the way it is designed that you have the worst people out there, the people who profit off of dead children in order to sell performance-enhancing, powders and fear-mongering, that they have a space for which they will not be denied, and there's no recourse to say, no, this person's actually a bad actor, like not even like First Amendment stuff, like legitimately just a bad actor through and through. So then my hero, Mike Montiero, this pretty much sums up my stance on this. And if you haven't noticed, I'm a flaming liberal. There are times where the moral imperative to act is too big to ignore, not because it's affecting us, but because monsters exist. And as good people, it's our job to fight those monsters. It's our moral obligation. Once again, you, referring to Jack, have failed yours. And of course, Mike Montiero wants Jack fired. The point I would like to make in closing is that there is a way to design your products to account for users in a way that treats them with dignity. And at the end of the day, do you want to be associated with a troll who delights in those sort of circumstances? Or do you want to just, have some ways to make your product not a piece of crap and actually give people more power at the end of the day and actually have meaningful conversations with one another through what I believe might be the start of a longer process of making more humane applications. So from there, I'll go open up to question and answers, and all right.
So maybe we can have two questions, and then we can open it up to mingling, and anyone who has follow-up questions for John.
Okay. And also there's my Twitter handle, John Fallot, and johnfallot.com is my portfolio in case you want to hire me. I would very much. And my email is there as well, so any questions we do not answer tonight, you can definitely email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Or any derisive comments either, because we all love those.
How do you make ethics appealing for our stakeholders? Given that we are designers and we cater to make primarily usability, how do we convince our stakeholders to actually go for ethics and dignity?
Oh wait, do we have okay. So regarding stakeholders, one angle to this approach is that there are as I pointed out in kind of the axiom 3 I listed out, that there are punitive costs that come about when you have to clean up crises left and right. And through anticipating those and designing around those, you can avoid having to deal with those prohibitive costs. For the sake of analogy, there was a case back in the assembly lines of General Motors and Toyota, where with General Motors, they had their cars going out, and they had a guy at the end of the line that would just hammer the doors to fit their slots. Then they went to, I believe it was Toyota, it could have been another Japanese car manufacturer, and they didn't have someone hammering the doors, and the executives who were at Toyota were like, well, what's going on here? Why don't they have someone hammer the doors in? And the Japanese company's response was, we just designed the doors to fit in the first place, so you don't need to have someone hammer in the doors. In the case of something like a corporation and making it appeal to their stakeholders, that's one way to go about it. There are also a lot of corporations that believe in social goodness programs, Deloitte is one of them. And there are similar companies out there that very much believe in doing social good as part of their mission. So having a humane design is very much in keeping with that part of their mission. Beyond that, I also recognize this stuff is probably not going to appeal to everyone. I mean, someone from InfoWars is probably going to be the last person I expect to adopt humane design heuristics. But, and the same goes for any sort of company that, you know, every time you're playing a game on your phone and like you're trying to just get something done, all of a sudden an app pops up, has a tiny little X in the corner, and you have to like, you try and close it, but it leads you to another page. That kind of company, the one who designs those ads, probably not interested in, you know, ethical, humane design. So that would be my case and argument for dealing with stakeholders. Any other questions?
What do you think of Apple and Google's new implementations for digital well-being? Like Google calls it digital well-being, Apple calls it screen time, I think. Like, do you think they're doing enough, or is there something that's missing, or do you think users will actually use their apps to limit their screen time on their phones?
I'm afraid I haven't heard as much as I should about Google's initiatives, although I have heard with Facebook they are implementing measures to track and monitor user time on applications. And I think better late than never, go for it. I'm not going to be like, oh, you didn't do it at the right time, I should have done it in the first place. It's like, if you come around to it, great, go for it. So, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to like be like, oh yeah, like, screw those guys. It's like, no, like, you're doing good, like, you realize you made a mistake, you iterate from there, kudos. So, any other questions? I think we have
Big one. Since you just said Facebook.
Okay.
So Facebook just lost at least, I'm not sure, 20% of their market stock just because they wanted to go into ethics. I'm not entirely sure what feature it was, but based on ethics, they dropped stock, and that made it very unpopular with investors and all that sort. So, what's the argument against that? Given that it's not profitable to actually go into ethics, how would you say that we should move forward as designers? Even saying that we want to do good, but hey, it's not profitable to do so.
Okay, so on the one hand, I'm not entirely familiar, well, this of course is also news to me, I'm afraid, but at the same time, it's hard to really draw one-to-one correlations between, you know, things that happen on the stock market and, you know, a decision, well, sometimes. That, and there's also other issues with Facebook in terms of decisions they've made in the past, which probably have come to bear at some level. But honestly, like, if some guy's gonna like sell their stocks because like, oh my, this company's going to have to work, it's like, there's such a thing as intangibles, you know, we're more than just, and that's kind of the whole point of my talk, is like, you can't just view things in terms of raw numbers and, you know, money symbols, because it's just not sustainable. There's so many points about the stock market right now that are just not sustainable. Warren Buffett came up with a recommendation that companies should really ditch doing quarterly reports because it just doesn't derive long-term value for the shareholders. And these sort of moves by companies that are more ethical and build up some level of brand equity, I would like to think that in the long term that'll have some value, but at the same time, like, it just, there's some things that are bigger than money, it's like you can't just, view people as money signs. But why?
So I think these are very deep, complex questions. Yeah. I invite everyone to keep discussing as we enjoy these refreshments that magically appeared. Thanks so much, John.